Hey there, hello, Sindre here. This is a mini lecture in the course WIN 100 Introduction to Offshore Wind Energy. And the topic of this mini lecture is going to be project management. I'm going to try to define project management and some concept that goes within this concept of project management. But before that, who am I and who am I to tell you about project management? I am an associate professor in industrial economics, and I teach two courses at master level. One is called IND 510, Project Management, and the other one is called IND 550, Project Cost Estimation and Risk Analysis. So I'm teaching two courses here on project management. Not only that, I did my PhD on the topic of why do projects fail in terms of cost overruns, in other words, which I will define later on unless I forget. So that's a little bit about me. So let's just get straight to it then, shall we? No, project management. What is that? We need some kind of definition. And I'm going to rely on the definition that is used in the curriculum book in my introductory course to project management. It's written by Gardner, published in 2005, and it's called, let's see if I can remember from memory, Project Management, a Strategic Planning Approach. So on page 2 of this book, Gardner tries to give us some kind of definition of project management. And one issue that he points out is that project management as a discipline is not very scientific. We don't have very strict, well-established definitions of any kind of concept that we have in the discipline. So pick any random book on project management, and you'll get one definition of what a project is, the project management. And then you can pick another book on project management, they get a completely different definition. So that is an issue. So what Gardner does is to try to consolidate many different definitions, if I can pronounce that, and try to synthesize or come to the core aspects of what makes project management. So the definition that he chooses to use at first glance doesn't seem very good. It's a bit of a tautological definition, like a circular reference. But the way that Gardner defines project management is as follows. The discipline of project management is concerned with managing projects successfully. So project management is to manage projects successfully. At first glance, that doesn't seem to provide us any sort of real insight. Project management is the management of project. Economic crime is a crime of an economic nature. It's circular. But that is fine. We can fix this. And we can fix this namely by trying to further define some of the key concepts involved here. So if you paid attention, there are 3 concepts in there that we can look further into. First of all, what exactly is a project? If project management is about managing projects, what is a project then? And what does it mean to manage? And what does it mean to be successful in terms of project? So these 3 concepts, we will try to unravel them a little bit more. So starting out, what is a project? A project is a particular type of activity, task or endeavor. So in Gardner here, we don't distinguish between these 3 concepts. Task, activity, endeavor means the same thing. But not all activities are projects, but all projects are some sort of activity. There are special characteristics that turns an activity into specifically being a project. And these 3 are that the activity must be temporary. It cannot go on forever. And a little caveat there, it needs to be intentionally temporary. Second of all, it needs to be unique somehow. Either the process itself can be unique, or the outcome of the process can be unique, or a combination of the two. And the final characteristic here is that we have what is called a process of progressive elaboration, which kind of means that we don't know everything ahead of time. We are figuring some of the details out as we progress through the activity. So these 3 things, temporary, unique, and progressive elaboration, These are called primary characteristics of a project. An activity needs to have all three of these in order to be considered a project. If it's missing one or two or even all of them, it is simply not a project. So, wind farms. Making and operating a wind farm. Is that a project? Yes. There are some disagreements though in how exactly to put the boundaries of a project. We could say that constructing a wind farm is its own project, and then operating it for 25 years or 30 years or whatever the lifespan happens to be could be another project. But in my own research on the project performance of wind farms, I tend to regard the construction and the operation and the decommissioning, all these three phases, as just the project. But it is possible to define it differently though, to regard them as different projects that are related. So that was project. What about the second concept here? To be successful. Success, kind of depends. As an individual, you can define success however you want. But when it comes to projects, we need to be more, tangible. We need to be more specific and try to keep this definition the same across all contexts. So the classical or traditional way of defining project success is to say that the project is successful to the extent that we are able to bring about the project deliverables within the three fundamental constraints of time, cost, and scope. So if we are able to build our wind farm, for instance, on budget, that we don't have any cost overruns, then the project is successful in terms of the constraint of cost, at least. And by the way, my doctoral dissertation was specifically about the cost overruns of offshore projects within the petroleum industry, by the way. The second thing here is delays. For instance, are we able to build this wind farm within whatever time span that we planned? If we said that it's going to take 3 years to build some kind of hypothetical wind farm, then you are successful in terms of time if we're able to actually do this within 3 years. If we go beyond 3 years or whatever the plan was, then you have a schedule overrun. And the final one is benefit shortfall, which is that the benefits that you were planning to get becomes less than you thought they would be. So what would that be? That could, for instance, be that the profitability of the project became less than you expected it to. For instance, that net present value becomes lower. So that is what is project success. Is defined as the absence of cost overruns, schedule overruns or delays, and the absence of benefit shortfalls. Now, that being said, there's a lot of disagreement in the literature if we should have additional constraints. Why only time, cost, and scope? What about if you just put an infinitely large budget? Then of course you will always be able to finish the project without any cost overruns. So maybe we should add additional constraints here, that we need to be cost competitive, that we are not building a wind farm any more expensively or planning to build it more expensively than some other company that's doing similar things. So cost competitiveness, that could be an additional constraint that we could add. Another kind of disagreement in the literature regarding defining project success is where exactly do you put the threshold? Is it the case that the moment you have $1 of cost overrun, then the project is an instant failure? For instance, the construction of Dogger Bank wind farm. It's going to be the largest wind farm in the world, offshore wind farm, bottom fixed, when it's completed. That has a budget or a cost estimate of 9 billion British pounds. Are we really going to consider this project a failure if it has £1 of cost overrun? That seems unnecessarily harsh. So maybe we should allow some amount of cost overrun before we consider it to be a failure in terms of cost overrun. But how much cost overrun should we allow for? 5%, 10%, 25%? Is an open question in the literature. And a third problem with or disagreement in the literature on defining project success is what exactly are you comparing to? A project doesn't have one cost estimate. It has many different cost estimates made at various different points in time throughout the lifespan of the project. So which one should you compare to? One opinion is that you should compare the realized cost of the project, once the project is completed, with the cost estimate that was available at the time when you sanctioned the project. When you officially decided we are going to do this project, you have some sort of cost estimate in mind. So you should compare to that. That is one opinion. Another opinion is that if you at some point have a kind of a scope change in the project, then the initial project sanctioning cost estimate becomes at least partially invalid or erroneous. So for instance, Dogger Bank originally had a plan to use 12 megawatt turbines. They later on changed it to 13, and then they're planning maybe to increase it for 14 for the final third of the project. So they have made a change here to the plan. Should we really then use the original plan, which was predicated on the assumption of having 12 megawatt wind turbines? Maybe, maybe not. Open discussion. So that was project success, and there is one more key concept here in defining project management. Remember, that was what is a project, what is project success, and the final one, what does it mean to manage in the context of projects. Now, to define what management means, that's a very difficult thing on its own. So the definition essentially that Gardner chooses to use is just to define management as the tasks that a manager does in their capacity as being a manager. So essentially we're just going to list up the different things, activities, sort of tasks that a manager would do if they are hired to be a project manager. There is a very, very long list of different responsibilities and tasks and skills that the project manager needs to have. So what Gardner does is to kind of categorize these into four major groups. One of them is planning. Managing in the context of projects is about planning. So we can plan in terms of the three constraints we talked about. We can plan in terms of, we can make a schedule, making a network diagram, a Gantt chart, for instance. We can make a budget, to plan in regards to the cost constraint, and so on and so forth. So making plans and planning, that is part of what it means to manage. Another key or main category of project management tasks, I remember there were four of them, is to control the project execution. Control is about making sure that the project is executed in accordance to the plan. And there we use tools such as feedback and feed forward, and we can use techniques such as earned value analysis to make sure that the project is on track in terms of schedule and budget. And the third main category of project management skills, that is organizing. Organizing is this whole own concept. I had many courses in my bachelor where you have organizational theory, organizational culture, organizational communication, and so on and so forth. So this is not a very easy thing to define. But organizing has to do with making organizational structure, making organizational chart, forming the organizational culture. It's about matching people with tasks and activities and responsibility and that sort of thing. And the final thing is leading. So the fourth category of main project management tasks and responsibilities is leading. Now, the difference between management and leading, that is a very big topic on its own. The thing about project management is that if you are a project manager, you're both a manager and a leader. You're doing both things. But leadership has to do with, if you're going to simplify here, has to do with motivating the people involved in the project. So those were the four main categories of managing projects. Was planning, controlling, organizing, and leading. So if we put all of this together, then we will start to get a more useful definition of what project management is. So the original definition is just simply saying that project management is to manage projects successfully. Well, now we know exactly what we mean by project, we know what we mean by successfully, and we know what we mean by management. So project management is the controlling, is the planning and controlling, organizing and leading. of activities that are temporary, unique, and requires progressive elaboration, in order to make sure that this activity is able to bring about these deliverables within the fundamental constraints of time, cost, and scope. So to minimize the chance of cost overrun, schedule overruns, and benefit shortfalls. So that is what project management is in short. And of course there are quite a few details that we skipped over. Okay, that was the basic theory, basic definitions of key concepts. What is project management? What do you mean by management? What do you mean by project success? What do you mean by project? All very interesting. But what about research? What does the latest research on the intersection between offshore wind farms and project management show? Well, to be honest, there isn't really all that much research about this particular topic. And the reason for that is pretty simple. All things considered, there really isn't that much data to work with. If you're going to research, let's say, building roads, roundabouts, bridges, tunnels, there are thousands of roads and tunnels you can look at. But wind farms, they are pretty big, pretty capital intensive, and there's not that many of them. If you look at UK, for instance, in the period from 2000, when they built the first offshore wind farm, until 2022, they only have 39 wind farms. Now, in the global context, that is a lot. Until China started to build wind farms, like Europe had like 90% of the capacity within offshore wind power. But still, 39 from a statistical point of view, it is very little. Less than 50 observations. You can't do all that much empirical research with such a limited data set. So for that very reason, not that much research is available. Nevertheless, there are a few articles here and there that could be of interest. For instance, here's a paper that looks at how to estimate the construction cost or the capital expenditure, the investment cost of an offshore wind farm. So what this paper does, it conducts what we call parametric cost estimation. In parametric cost estimation, you can use statistical techniques such as regression analysis. You put the capital expenditure of a particular project on the left-hand side of the equation, and then you have a bunch of different cost drivers on the right-hand side of the equation. And based on that, you can see what empirical effect does a 1 unit increase in some kind of cost driver have on the capital expenditure of the project. So if you look at this sort of research, you will see that there are some usual suspects in terms of what are the cost drivers of offshore wind farms. That would be things such as the distance to the shore or distance to the harbor. And what the empirical research find is that the further ashore, the more bottom-fixed wind farms, for instance, tend to cost. And that makes sense. Further away, longer transportation lines going to cost more. Longer distance to build cables, that sort of things. Another cost driver that we find is that the water depth. The deeper the water where the wind farm is situated, the more, everything else being equal, it's going to cost you to build this particular wind farm. So that makes sense also. Of course, the size of the wind farm itself, measured in installed capacity, nameplate capacity, could be measured in megawatt. The bigger the wind farm, the more obviously it is going to cost. And another cost driver that this sort of empirical research has identified is the capacity, not of the wind farm, but the turbines themselves, the wind turbine generator. And this one is interesting because it has the opposite effect. The bigger the capacity of the wind turbine generator, everything else being equal, the less the wind farm tends to cost. That is because you require fewer wind turbine generators, the more capacity each of them have. And that also means less inter-array cabling. It also means fewer trips with the ships that are installing these sort of things, and so on and so forth. So those are the 4 common cost drivers identified in the empirical research. But this is to estimate the capital expenditure. What about cost overruns? How does that look like? So arguably the world's most prominent researcher within project performance is Flyberg. He had a breakthrough article, a very seminal article, back in 2002. Him and colleagues, they conducted what they claim to be the first ever statistically significant research on project cost overruns. Back then they looked at 258 projects within transportation infrastructure, so building bridges and tunnels and roundabouts and roads, that kind of things. So what they found was that 9 out of 5 projects have cost overrun. Later on in his career, he has expanded to look at more projects in different sectors, in different countries, and so on and so forth. And he has created what is known as the world's largest database on project performance. He has over 16,000 projects from all over the world, from different time periods and in different industries, different type of projects, public projects and private projects, and so on and so forth. And based on this database of 16,000 projects, what he finds is that 99.5% of projects have some kind of, has either cost overruns or delays or benefit shortfalls or some kind of combination of these three. So what is interesting is that cost overruns, project failure, that is the rule, that is the norm, that's not the exception, it is the rule. So he has coined what has become known as the iron law of mega project, over time, over budget, again and again. But what is interesting here is that there's variation between different types of projects. So what Flyberg finds is that wind farms is the project type that has the least amount of cost overruns, not in absolute numbers, but in relative numbers. So wind farms tend to have more seldom have cost overruns compared to other type of projects, and when they do have cost overruns, the cost overrun tends to be less in percentage. That being said, I believe that his database or his conclusion here is predominantly based on onshore wind farms. But this course is about offshore wind farms. So is there a difference between onshore and offshore wind farms in terms of their performance, in terms of cost? Is there a difference there in the cost overrun? And based on this one paper that I found, yes, that is the case. The statistical distribution of cost overruns for onshore and offshore is significantly different from each other. And as you would suspect, onshore wind farms, they perform a lot better compared to the offshore wind farms. So all things considered here, yes, onshore wind farms are really good. Offshore wind farms are worse in terms of cost overruns, but they are still pretty good compared to many other different types of projects. So referencing back to Flyberg's database, what is the worst type of project? That would be things such as nuclear power plants and Olympic Games. Those two in particular are examples that he points out as being on the top of the list, or the top of the worst list of cost overruns. No, but that is just the cost side. Remember this? We have the triangle, the iron triangle. Cost, time, and scope. What about the two other constraints of a project? What about time? What about benefit shortfalls? Well, if you are into the literature on project management, you will see that we mostly talk about the cost. We very rarely talk or do research about benefit shortfalls and about delays. And the reason for that, again, is data availability. Data on cost overruns and investment costs like that is more likely to be recorded and reported to the public compared to delays and benefit shortfalls. Nevertheless, there's a bit of research available on delays on offshore wind farms. A paper that I co-authored, we looked at a handful of different projects, so this is case studies. And what we did, we looked at every single work hour registered to this project, and we classified them into two categories: productive work hours and unproductive work hours. And then we tried to disaggregate further the unproductive work hours, like why were they unproductive, what was the reason, what caused this this hour of labor to be wasted. So that paper, you can look at that if you want a dissection of what is causing the delays in offshore wind farm projects. But when it comes to more aggregate statistics, I don't think I've seen any papers on offshore wind farms, but I have seen a paper on onshore projects and how they perform in terms of delays. So you can look at that paper for more information. When it comes to benefit shortfalls of wind farms, that is really difficult to say anything about because you haven't fully realized the benefits of the project before the project is completed, right? So there are very few wind farms that actually have reached the stage where they are decommissioned. So currently, right now, we don't really know if the wind farms are giving us the benefits, giving us the value that we thought they would. No, some wind farms have been operating for 10 or 20 years, so we can approximate an answer. But we won't really know for sure how the benefits, or if there are benefit shortfalls, before we reach decommissioning of a more significant number of wind farms. So that is some of the research on project management of offshore wind farms. I hope you found this mini lecture interesting. If you want more details, you can check out the papers that I mentioned, or if you want even more details, you can sign up for my 2 courses. So see you around. Bye bye.